Russell Brand just dropped a bombshell that has everyone talking. I met Jesus 6 days ago. The same guy who once lived a life of wild parties and chaos now claims he's had a life-changing encounter with Christ. But this isn't just another headline-grabbing moment. It's deeply personal, tied to his newfound faith and a journey he says has brought him peace in a world full of chaos. So what exactly did Jesus tell him, and how did it change his life forever? Russell Brand has always been a man of many transformations, but his recent claim, I met Jesus 6 days ago, has left everyone stunned. It's not just another quirky statement from the former Hollywood wild child. No, this one's deeply personal, tied to a spiritual journey that's been brewing for years. If you followed his story, you know Russell's life hasn't exactly been a straight road. He's stumbled through addiction, struggled with fame, and tried just about every path to find meaning. But now, he says, everything has changed. Let me take you back a little. Russell was the kind of guy who thrived on chaos. He was always chasing thrills, whether it was through fame, money, or substances. For years, he openly shared his battles with addiction and his attempts to find purpose in the material world. And sure, he found success, but it always seemed to leave him empty. He's described feeling like the world was controlled by dark forces that saw him only as a consumer, a commodity, or just another cog in the machine. Can you imagine how suffocating that must feel? It's no wonder he kept searching for something deeper. The real turning point, though, came during a time of personal crisis. Russell shared that his son was born with complications and had to undergo open-heart surgery at a very young age. As a parent, that kind of fear and helplessness can shake you to your core. For Russell, it did more than that. It cracked open a door to faith. He started to wonder, what if there's more to life than just what we can see and measure? What if the sacred and the spiritual are not just myths, but real, living forces? These questions became impossible to ignore. Then came the moment that changed everything. Russell says he met Jesus, not in some abstract, metaphorical way, but in a deeply personal, undeniable experience. He describes it as overwhelming and unavoidable, like a presence he could feel, not just imagine. According to him, Jesus brought a message that love, kindness, and sacrifice are the way forward. In a world drowning in corruption and despair, Russell believes this encounter gave him clarity and purpose. And it's not just words for him. Russell says this experience has transformed how he sees himself and the world. He talks about surrendering his ego and stepping into a life of service, something he admits he's still learning to do. It's as if the restless, thrill-seeking man he once was has given way to someone who finds joy in humility and faith. To him, this is no small change. It's a complete rebirth. If part 1 of Russell Brand's story is about his transformation, part 2 explores something bigger, how faith fits into a world that feels lost and broken. And here's where things get interesting. You see, Russell didn't just wake up one day and decide to believe in Jesus. It wasn't about blind faith. For him, there's a fascinating mix of personal experience, a hunger for answers, and even some compelling historical evidence. That's where the Shroud of Turin comes into the picture. Now, if you've never heard of the Shroud of Turin, let me fill you in. It's this ancient piece of cloth that many believe was Jesus' burial shroud. What's mind-blowing is that it bears the faint image of a man, front and back. And people have speculated for centuries that this could be Jesus. Of course, there's been controversy around it for just as long. Back in the 1980s, researchers used carbon dating and claimed the shroud was from the Middle Ages, much later than Jesus' time. People took that as proof it wasn't real. Here's the twist. New X-ray research dates the Shroud of Turin to about 2,000 years ago, the time of Jesus. For Russell, this discovery feels like confirmation, though he admits faith goes beyond science. To him, the shroud is less about proof and more about connection. But Russell's story isn't just about artifacts. It's about how faith fills the emptiness of a modern world consumed by corruption, distractions, and disconnection. A world he says is controlled by dark forces. Hard to argue with that, isn't it? For Russell, Christianity offers an antidote to all that. It's not just about believing in a God who exists somewhere out there. It's about experiencing a living presence that gives life meaning. He says this connection to Jesus has pulled him out of the nihilism that used to weigh him down. Instead of seeing the world as meaningless, he now sees it as sacred, filled with purpose and beauty. And maybe that's the real miracle, not just that he met Jesus, but that he found a way to truly live. And then there's the baptism. It wasn't something Russell planned, but it ended up being a huge moment for him. Picture this, Russell Brand, standing by the River Thames, getting baptized by none other than Bear Grylls. It sounds almost too surreal to be true, but it happened. The act of going under the water, of letting go of his past, was a turning point. He describes it as feeling the Holy Spirit, a powerful moment of renewal that changed him forever. But of course, not everyone sees it that way. Some people criticize Russell for sharing his journey so publicly, calling it performative or even hypocritical, but he doesn't seem to care. He's not trying to convert anyone or force his beliefs on them. Instead, he's just telling his story, raw and unfiltered, in the hopes that it might inspire someone else to start asking the big questions. So here we are, at the final part of Russell Brand's journey, and this is where things shift from being just about him to something much bigger. Because Russell isn't just sharing his story to tell you about his experience, he's pointing to something that's happening all around us. He believes we're living through a moment where people are waking up to the need for faith, for something beyond the material world, and his transformation is just one small piece of that puzzle. For decades, people have drifted from religion, replacing faith with science, consumerism, or distractions. But Russell sees a shift. More young adults now believe in a higher power, realizing the material world isn't enough. He explains that crises often push people to seek deeper meaning. For him, that meaning is Jesus, though he stresses everyone's journey is unique. What matters, he says, is looking beyond fame or wealth and turning inward and upward for answers. What's fascinating about Russell is how he addresses the elephant in the room, the criticisms of religion. Let's be honest, religion has a messy history. From wars to scandals, there's no shortage of reasons to be skeptical, and Russell doesn't shy away from that. He acknowledges the sins of the past, but he also points out something important. The failings of institutions don't erase the beauty of faith itself. For him, Christianity isn't about defending a system. It's about a personal relationship with Christ, one that brings love, healing, and purpose. And that's the message he's trying to share, not in a preachy way, but in a deeply personal one. Russell says his life has changed because he feels free for the first time. Free from the pressures of ego, from the emptiness of chasing success, and from the fear that life has no meaning. He's found joy in service, humility, and connection with others. And he wants people to know that this kind of transformation is possible for anyone. It's not about having all the answers. It's about being willing to ask the questions. Why are we here? What does it mean to live a good life? And who or what can guide us when everything feels dark? For Russell, the answer to all of that is Jesus. But even if you're not ready to take that step, he says, the journey itself is worth it, because every step you take toward finding meaning brings you closer to the light. As Russell says, this isn't just about him, it's about all of us. He believes we're living in a time where people are rediscovering faith, and that's something to celebrate. Whether you're religious, spiritual, or just curious, his story is a reminder that we're all searching for something. And maybe, just maybe, we're closer to finding it than we think. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.